So let's get into the offensive line, Jeff. And we've talked about this before over the course of this offseason. And I know Paul Dottino is probably a lot higher on the current group and the young guys. And he really thinks that they can kind of just stick with the status quo. But let's take a look at where they're at first. Jeff, taking a look at the roster. As we sit right now at offensive tackle, Cameron Fleming was obviously on the team last year. He's heading into free agency. Nate Solder coming off of an opt-out year. He's somebody we'll see if he decides to come back, if he wants to play, if he's going to retire. And if he does want to come back and play, he has a pretty high salary cap hit, whether or not, they decide to try to work on that. You also, of course, have Andrew Thomas, last year's fourth overall pick at offensive tackle. And you have Matt Parrott, who was a Giants' third-round pick out of UConn last year. He rotated in, got some more snaps early in the year, Jeff, dealt with an injury late in the year, and didn't play quite as well late in the year or play as often late in the year. So just your thoughts right now at offensive tackle first, where the Giants stand with their current roster.
Well, I think that we know what the left tackle is going to be. Thomas will be there, and I think he did show some improvement as the season went, John. And I think going into year number 2, new offensive line coach, I think things are going to be good for him. So I think that was pretty solid on that left side. I think that as we move into the center position, the left guard, we got to have a little bit of discussion there. You look at Lemieux and how he played last season. Not all that great. A guy coming in here, we thought he was going to do better. And they had that rotational system going in there. And Hernandez is, I don't know. I think this is kind of a show it year for the Giants for him and see what happens. So I think there'll be some competition between those two guys, whether they're both going to stay at left, maybe moving forward to the center position. You've got Nick Gates, obviously proved he could play that position after not even doing it ever, John, and he did a pretty good job of it. Probably the most consistent of all the guys that played that offensive line position last year. And then on the right side, well, we got a little bit of discussion with Zeitler. What's going to happen with him? We're in the era right now, as we speak, of teams trying to figure out how they're going to get under the cap and how much money they're going to be able to go after. And that's one position that I feel like it's a discussion right now that they're having with Kevin Zeitler. And then the right tackle, Fleming, you'd mentioned. He's going to be a free agent, so whether they're going to have him back or not. But Matt Parrott is a guy that got some playing time last year that I think they've earmarked him to be the right tackle starting position next year. So, where does that lead us to where we're going to talk about the draft? It's depth to me. But I also believe, after really kind of reviewing this morning, John, I do believe that there's going to be somebody, whether it's a free agent or a draft pick, that's going to be starting on this offensive line anew this year. That's just my wild pick, if you want to say something.
Okay, let's take this one position at a time. You agree. You said Andrew Thomas, I'm with you. Starting left tackle. Plug him in. Go to war. Bing, bang, boom. Finish the conversation. You hope he continues to improve. He got a lot better second half of last season, and you hope he continues to improve this year. Yep. So right tackle is more interesting. Yeah. And I think ideally, and this is the point that you just made, if Matt Parrott can come out and win this job in the offseason and be your starting right tackle, I think that's what you want. But what level of backstop do you want, for lack of a better word, in case he doesn't make the progress you want and he's not ready to claim that starting job? So is it a Cam Fleming that returns? Are you okay with him being your starter if he needs to be? And then you have the Solder thing that you have to work out. So how do you think they handle that with Parrott, where you want to give him an opportunity to win the starting job, but you also want to make sure you have something there in case he's not ready?
Yeah, I don't think you could just hand the job to him you can't do that. So they're going to have to create some competition. I don't know. I think that Cam Fleming is a guy that, and I don't know exactly how much the Giants paid him last year. Was it $3 million or something like that, John? But I don't know if that's going to be an option for them to have him come back and want to pay him that type of money just because of where the salary cap is. So I see like this is a position where there could be a free agent acquisition and somewhere in the draft to compete with. I think they want Parrott, they want him to be the tackle. And I think that he showed a little bit of, he got hurt. So he was playing good. And then all of a sudden, he just got hurt. But I feel like that's who they want to play. I think he's developing into a starter, but there's got to have some competition. So that's where I think they'll go there, John. I do.
All right, then let's move into guard. You mentioned it last year. Zeitler was the one, really consistent cog there. He was at right guard the whole year. I think he only rotated out of a game once the entire year in one game. He took a couple snaps off, and that was it. Mm-hmm. He was a staple there.
Yeah.
But it started with Will Hernandez at left guard. He had some issues, especially picking up stunts and stuff like that. Then he ended up getting COVID. He gets put on the COVID list. He misses a few weeks. Shane Lemieux steps in, and then Hernandez will occasionally rotate in, but he never really got his job back.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's going to be an open competition to start the year at left guard. May the best man win. But I think then you have to open up the conversation a little bit, Jeff, as to whether or not one of those guys will even compete with Zeitler. And maybe Lemieux and Hernandez are your two guards if something happens with trying to manage a salary cap. So I think that's the interesting thing when you have that conversation about guard.
There's a lot to talk about. I think the easiest positions are the right and the left tackles. I think we kind of have an idea of those, but yeah, because there's so much that comes into it that you mentioned, and really with Zeitler, I think he's the guy. I think he's the one that we're going to have to see what happens here. And I think that it'll happen sooner than later if they're going to make a decision to let him go because of the cap. Let's just hypothetically say that they do that, John. I hope they don't, because you always hate to have anybody lose their job. But we talked about this last week about veteran players have to understand when they sign these big contracts at the beginning, they understand that at the end, they may be a cap casualty. So it's just the way of life in the NFL. But if he was to leave, could there be a possibility here? And I was thinking about this morning, that the Giants go out and, I'm not talking about a first round, but could they draft a center and move Nick Gates back to right guard, and then have Lemieux and Hernandez fight it out for a starting position and have one of them be a swing guy where they can go back and forth?
Why not just draft the guard then?
Or just draft the guard to keep him there. I don't know exactly how comfortable they feel about Nick Gates continuing to play center.
I want to leave him there, Jeff. I think he played pretty well last year, right?
Well, I'm all for it. And I guess to me, if I have to look into the draft and see what's better, can I find a center that's coming out of college that actually could play the guard position? Or do I find a super stud guard in this, maybe third round, somewhere around in there? I think that's kind of plausible. But, yeah, I'm with you. It just all depends on what the Giants want to do. But, you don't want to kind of mess with that chemistry of the snap and the quarterback, the whole thing there. Because, you've got a year under their belt. And I agree, may not want to switch them around, but I'm just kind of like throwing things out there that could happen. Could you see Nick Gates going to right guard if they found a center that they wanted to start?
I don't think it's impossible. I think they'd be very comfortable putting him there. I
Sure.
think he has a lot of these centers sometimes are a little undersized and they're not strong enough to play the guard spot. I don't think that's the case with Nick Gates. I think he'll be fine there.
No, yeah, I agree. And I don't know. We don't know the grade that the Giants gave Nick Gates at the center position. So from what we've seen, he did a pretty darn good job, especially not playing. So year two would probably be exciting for him, knowing that he's got a year under his belt. He knows the system. Daniel Jones is familiar with him, and I think that could work as an advantage. So I do believe that the Giants will draft an offensive lineman, whether it's an interior or a tackle guy. They might be able to play both positions. Because I still think there needs to be some depth. When you look at this roster, there's not a lot of depth at that offensive line position. There really isn't.
No, there isn't. Do you want to do draft or do you want to do free agency first?
Oh, you know what? I didn't. Let's do free agency because that's how it's coming up first. So let's talk about free agents.
Okay, Let's take a look at the free agents on the offensive line. But first, limited Giant season ticket plans are on sale now for the 2021 season. In addition to ticket savings, membership benefits include access to exclusive events, experiences, pre-sales, and more. You can lock in your seat starting at just $100. Call 888-NYG-1925 or visit Giants.com/tickets for more information. All right, Jeff, so there are some big guys on the market this year that are very good players, and these are not guys I think the Giants will be in the market for, just because of the salary cap and their needs elsewhere, but I'll throw out the names anywhere just because they're there. Trent Williams, who was a legitimate top tackle again last year after getting out of Washington. He played extremely well last year. Brandon Sheriff at guard is a free agent. He's somebody that's been extremely consistent. I can't imagine Washington's going to let him go away, but who knows? Keep an eye on him. Taylor Moton, who was a Dave Gettleman draft pick in Carolina, a second-round pick. He's been their right tackle. He's been a solid player there, just 26. Joe Thuney, and I bring him up because he's a guard, by the way. Yeah. He has connections to Joe Judge going back to New England. Just to call their names out there, Corey Linsley, who's an excellent center for the Packers. He's a free agent. I'm not sure if Russell Okung gets you excited, or Kuhn, but he's had some interesting things to say on and off the field and things of that nature. Alejandro Villanueva, a very, very consistent. He's only 32, but he's a good tackle for Pittsburgh. Darrell Williams, another former Dave Gettleman draft pick in Carolina. He had a bounce-back year last year after being hurt for much of the previous 2 seasons. He was in Buffalo last year. Rick Wagner, who was a guy that signed a fairly big contract before. He's a free agent. And then you have David Andrews as a free agent. Kelvin Beachum, who's kind of could be one of those swing tackles. Alex Mack, who's 35. He's not what he used to be, the center. He's out there. So these are just some of the names. Mike Remmers is a free agent again. Cam Robinson from a first-round pick for the Jaguars. James Hurst, who's been a backup tackle in this league for a long time for New Orleans. Ted Karras, who's a center. He used to be with New England, which is why I bring him up. So there are a lot of guys, Jeff, even past the top of the market, that if you're looking for solid veterans that you'd be okay starting, they're out there. But those top guys from Williams to Villanueva to Okung to Lindsley to Thuney to Moton to Sheriff to Williams, those guys are probably going to be out of the Giants' price range.
No question. You're looking at minimum of $10 million for all of those guys going forward, and 10's probably the lowest. Then so I just we forgot to mention Nate Solder coming out of the opt-out position that he is. So we don't know what the deal is with him coming back. So assuming he does come back, John, where is he going to play in the mix with the tackle position? Will he move over to the right where now we can have that competition that we were talking about earlier between Matt Parrott and somebody else? Maybe that's who it is. But if he doesn't come back, I still feel like they're going to have some competition. They got to have some depth over there in some way to have a competition, but they're not going to be able to afford it. So they're going to have to either find it in the draft, or if we're talking about free agents, go get one of those kind of mid-tier free agents that might cost you, like they did with Cam last year, $3-4 million. That's all they're going to be able to afford, in my opinion. I think that's where they go at it. I think they go for the tackle position.
Which is why, by the way, ideal scenario, Matt Parrott develops to the point where you don't have to rely on one of these 1-year, $4 or $5 million tackles. You know what I mean?
Exactly, and that's kind of what you want to do. But you have to understand, and you know this, there's injuries in National Football League, if you can believe it, and so you got to have a little bit of insurance policy. And I think an insurance policy for the Giants at the tackle position or even at a guard is going to be a free agent guy at a $3 to $4 million. That's going to be your insurance policy.
All right, and now let's look at the draft, Jeff. And at the top of the draft, you have some very good players. And this is actually one of the deeper classes at tackle that we've seen in a while. You could have probably, 6 or maybe 7 offensive tackles taken in the first 50 picks, which is a lot when you take a look at it year over year. Penei Sewell is probably the one guy that's not going to be available when the Giants select the number 11. He's suspected to be a top 5, 6, 7, 8 pick. He's 6'6", he's 325. He's just a big, strong dude that does a little bit of everything.
I saw a mock this morning.
What, 3rd overall or 2nd?
No, I saw a mock this morning where there was a trade. I think it was, I don't remember who traded up to get one of the quarterbacks. Oh, it was Denver. No, it wasn't Denver. Anyways, but they had Sewell dropping to 11.
Really?
Yeah. Now, that's going to be interesting, right? I mean, that if he's sitting there, you're taking him.
I think you have to.
You have to take this guy. This guy is a man amongst – I mean, he is a beast. It's him and then everyone else below in this draft this year. Last year we had the big 4, and you can go back and see how that went. But – for this draft,
and Sewell would be right with those guys.
If not
at the top of the list of those 4 guys last year.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead,
that's
please.
what I did see. I saw a mock today. I don't know where it was from. We go over them so much, but I was like, oh, look at this. And they're like, wow, could this happen? And if that happens, he goes to left tackle and you move Thomas to right tackle. That's what would happen.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think that's why. Though I think, did I leave my notes upstairs? I was watching tape of him this morning. I think I did leave my notes upstairs. Yeah, has he played right tackle at all?
He has played right tackle, but most of it has been from the left side. He's a mauler. And by the way, it doesn't even look like he's running. It's just he moves so smooth. It's unreal.
Yeah, he isn't like the best athlete, but his combination of size with the movement skills he has is just excellent. It's just very, very good. So now after him, Jeff, this is where it gets interesting because you have a few guys that are probably going to go in between like 10 and 25 in this draft. And I think a couple of the guys that we're talking about. I watched Rashawn Slater from Northwestern this morning. I'll tell you what, he's a little squatty with what you would normally think about for an offensive tackle. And by that I mean he kind of is built more like a guard in a lot of ways.
A lot of people think that they will move him, whoever drafts him will move him inside.
And they believe that he's going to measure under 33-inch arms. And if that happens, I think he's probably going to get moved into guard. But I got to be honest, I watched him at tackle, Jeff. I think he has better feet than Sewell. I think he gets his hands inside better than Penei Sewell. So it's just a matter of whether or not the high-end athleticism and traits are there for you for what you want out of a tackle position. But I'll be honest with you, even at 11, I'd probably be okay just picking him. And if he's good enough to start at tackle, great. Or if, Parrott ends up being, he's a really good right tackle. All right, just plug him in one of the guard spots, and you got yourself an all-pro guard right there, and you have your version of Zach Martin where you just plug him in there and let him go. So Rashawn Slater is a really, really good player.
Yeah, he's got it. He's just his quickness is. What I saw from him on tape. I didn't watch a lot of it, but I just feel like his foot, the way he gets off the ball, his foot quickness, as they call it.
His feet. He's never on the ground, Jeff. You know these offensive linemen that fall. Remember Eric Flowers fell down all the time.
Yes, I do.
Rashawn Slater's never on the ground ever. Very
natural, and definitely I think a better athlete than Sewell. But he's going to be a really good player in this league. For Virginia Tech, folks, that's where he came from. Got a good punch. And so.
Well, no. Slater's Northwestern, Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Northwestern.
Darisaw is Virginia Tech. Yep.
Darisaw is right, the next one on the list. But I feel like he's a guy that will be able to, like you said, you can pay him a tackle or you can move him inside to guard, and you'll be fine.
Now you have your next group of tackles, and you have Christian Darisaw, who you mentioned.
That's your VTech. Yep.
Not the best mover in my opinion, but a really big dude, 6'5", 314, strong. Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State. I have not watched him yet. Elijah Vera-Tucker.
Nasty.
Who is by the way, he was a guard and he played tackle for the first time this year. I thought he was okay out there.
Who are you talking about, Tevin, or are you talking about Dylan?
I was talking about Elijah Vera-Tucker out of USC.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, sure. Yep.
Then you have Dylan Redunce out of North Dakota State. Alex Leatherwood, someone we saw at the Senior Bowl. And then you have a guy like Sam Cosmi out of Texas, who a lot of people have as a top 40, top 50 pick. Walker Little out of Stanford. So you have I just listed
seven.
6 or 7 potential, tackles in the first 40 or 50 picks. That's a lot. So honestly, Jeff, most years I wouldn't say this. I think if the Giants wanted to draft a tackle, and again, I'm not sure they do because they probably have a lot of faith in Matt Parrott. That's why they drafted him in the 3rd round last year. You could probably get one in the 2nd round this year if you wanted to wait.
Yeah, and I just think that all of a sudden you look at the roster and look at kind of where you have to and we can use this word because we're not the people drafting, but where are there bigger needs in that 2nd round? I think you probably would. I wouldn't. But again, if you decided that you had to or you wanted to, they're there. They're definitely there for the picking because you got a lot of wide receivers. You've got a lot of cornerbacks, the quarterbacks. So by the time you get into that 42nd pick that the Giants have, one of these guys could be sitting there, and depending on how they're ranked, John, the Giants might pick one. You never know.
And I don't want to get the Notre Dame people mad at me because you know how passionate those
sure.
Notre
Go
Dame
ahead,
folks
throw that
are.
other Notre Dame name in there.
Liam Eichenberg is another guy
that
that could be a top 50 offensive tackle, and Jackson Carman out of Clemson too. So, like I said, a lot of names. All right, interior alignment very quickly. 2 guys or 3 guys maybe that I think could be options for the Giants in round number 2 if they want to go that way. I mentioned Elijah Vera-Tucker. If he's there as a guard in the 2nd round, I take him, and I'm going to the bank. I think I might have an all-pro guard there. I don't think he's going to make it that far. The other guy that's interesting is Alabama's Landon Dickerson, Jeff.
Yeah,
he was a dominant player last year, but he tore his ACL. He's had other surgeries on his legs in prior seasons before that. But he was a dominant center last year. You could play him a guard if you want to, in my opinion. But that could be the guy, if you love him enough, you're okay moving Nick Gates over to one of the guard spots.
Yes.
If you want to take that swing. And Creed Humphrey, by the way, is the
Yes.
other center that I thought was really, really good at the Senior Bowl. So those are the couple interior guys that I thought could be options in round 2. But it's not a great interior offensive line class from what I can tell. I haven't watched a ton of these guys yet, but none of these guys are really jumping out at me. But those are the two that did. Dickerson, Humphrey, and then Vera-Tucker, who I think will be drafted earlier because he played some tackle this year.
Yeah, and I think that, there's some other guys. Wyatt Davis is another one from Ohio
Yep,
State.
that's a good one. Yep.
He's a guard. He's projected to be like in the second round, so I would throw him in with those other guys. But, Landon Dickerson, he's a guy that I don't know if you remember in the championship game when he went out and took the knee in the final snap.
I know.
That was pretty cool. But this guy was a leader. And you know that anybody that's starting for Alabama, especially on the offensive line, has leadership skills.
Yeah, I saw him interviewed at the Senior Bowl, and he just seemed like an awesome. He would have fit in with like Richie Soibert and those guys back
100%.
in 2007.
They're all just they come from the same mold. Those offensive linemen, they really do. Creed Humphrey is another guy that I think that will probably be there in the late second to third round. This is just from the research that I'm showing.
Now,
on
Jeff, if Creed Humphrey was there in the second round last year, you would have been all over that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I wanted that center. Hey, I wanted a center so bad that they moved somebody else that's never played it into that position.
Yeah,
so that
it
just
worked.
goes to show you.
Yeah.
And it worked. God bless them. That's interesting. And, Nick Gates did a good job. And I think that he was one of the more consistent guys on that line and at a new position. So, he's going to have I hope he comes out and just dominates this year. And if they keep him at center, I think they will, John. We're just kind of talking about all this. You never know what's going to happen. But I agree with you on all the guys. I wouldn't be surprised and if they did take a center because where's the depth at center right now? You don't have it, right? I mean, I don't think Spencer Pulley's coming back, and so who's your other center now, John? You don't have one.
No,
right?
yeah, I mean, center Pulley could come back as a backup in theory.
Could be, but he didn't play. I don't think he played a snap last year.
Well, luckily because Nick Gates was healthy the whole year. I mean, that was the benefit.
That is a really good thing. So maybe if you could get one of these centers in the third or fourth round, I would be happy with that. Because I just feel like the first and the second round picks, I think there's just a better positional draft picks that you go after other than the center position or the guard.
And just FYI, they do have other guys on the roster, too, that we didn't mention on the offensive line that I probably should. Jackson Barton, a young guy they drafted, or a young guy. He's been in the league 2 years out of Utah. Kyle Murphy out of Rhode Island was an undrafted free agent last year that you can kind of keep an eye on. Let's see, who else do we have here? I want to look at the future reserve list just so make sure I mention all these guys' names. Chad Slade is someone that was kind of up and down last year. He's a solid veteran backup that I think is a very helpful player.
I think the Giants like him, too.
Yeah, Kenny Wiggins, a veteran out of Fresno State. He's a 7-year player. So they actually don't have a ton of guys on the future reserve list on the offensive line. So they might add some guys there at some point over the course of the offseason.
I think they will. I think they will. I think that there is going to be one offensive lineman drafted, in my opinion, on the draft this year somewhere. I don't think it's going to be real high, but I think it might be between those.
Will it be day 3 or day 2?
I think it'll be day 3.
Okay.
I think it'll be at the 76 or the 116.
All right.
One of those two.
Let me ask you this final question, Jeff.
Sure.
And then we'll get to the calls. I know Jason's been waiting. Will the 5, and you might have answered this already, but I'll ask it again anyway.
Okay.
Will the 5 starters week 1 of the season next year, barring injury, of course, are they on the roster right now?
No.
Okay.
No.
And you think the
Most
player the player that is not on the roster, what position will he play?
I believe he will play guard.
Okay. I think that's a good bet.
I believe, and again, we don't. Again, we have to just speculate to have a conversation about this. So I don't want to, have Kevin Zeitler losing his job today.
No,
but
of course
the fact
not.
of the
Neither
matter
do I.
is that the fact is that it's reality. It's what we talk about as far as teams that need to go after money. This is the way that they do it. So if that's the case, then I believe that there will be a free agent or a draft pick that's going to go in there and play the right guard position, and then the left guard. Whoever doesn't win that one, John, is going to be the backup for both of them.
Yeah, and I interviewed Adam Kaplan today for the huddle. That should be going up tomorrow. And he said that the NFLPA and most teams are thinking between 180 and 185.
Okay. Well, still, that's about $20 million less than it was. So it's still a lot of money.
Yeah, it was 198 last year. And remember, teams were anticipating for it to go up to like 210. So you're basically looking at a drop of more than $20 million from where they thought it was going to be. So just something to keep an eye on.
And by the way, they do anticipate that bump every year. And of course, last year when they signed the free agents and they then all of a sudden COVID came around, they've already had earmarked that the 2021 season was going to have more money. But so now it comes to more of a reality is that they got to go find some money.
Well, what might save it too, Jeff? And Peter King reported this last week that they might try to get these new TV deals done in the next month. And they're asking for according to reports, a 70 to 100% increase on these deals from most of the networks, which if they get that in their pocket, they can then spread this out over a few more years on the cap, so they might soften the blow a little bit. So we'll see if they're able to do that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that does happen because that'll help the teams with a little bit of financial help and be able to go forward with it.